Back when I was in university, the differences between then and now. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I've gotten a request or two asking me to make an entire video about my experiences in college, presumably to show people with my lived experiences how different things were when I went, which was starting in 1998 at a community college when I was still in high school, and then 4-year university from 2000 through 2004. Problem is, things weren't really all that much different due to the fact that I went to a community college on Capitol Hill in Seattle, which is the big LGBT neighborhood, and then went on to go to the new school in New York City, which is the institution that actually gave Anita Sarkeesian an honorary degree, whatever that says. Though granted, there's some very good programs at my school. Still, there were some differences and similarities as compared to now, which I will do my best to explain. Overall, going to community college while I was in high school for the Running Start program was actually pretty cool, as I got to take classes I otherwise wouldn't have gotten to take, and I met a lot of cool older people. However, I did have an American government teacher that was basically a not so thinly veiled black supremacist, which was a bit awkward. I remember one day, back in the late 90s, him talking about how the United States is a white supremacist nation built on the foundation of slavery, etc., etc. He went on to deliver the basic message that these types of people always deliver, which is that if you are not spending your every waking moment fighting the system of white supremacy, then you are complicit in the system and are thus part of the problem. I was always rather independent-minded, rebellious, and a bit fearless. Also, it seemed like most of the black kids in the class, and there were several, were also rolling their eyes just as much as I was. That being said, I raised my hand and said something to the effect of, "Okay, but what about being somebody like myself that is actually just friends with lots of people of all colors, and I'm involved with a diverse music scene, and I promote anti-racist ideals by simply not being racist? And what if I'm just like that and I try to lead by example? Is that any good?" He basically just said, "No, not really." I didn't push the issue anymore, but I believe I got an A, or maybe a spiteful A-, because I could tell he stopped liking me, though I was a good student. Regardless, there were some students who worshipped the ground that he walked on and treated him like a mentor, some of which, who were former students of his, were in a rap duo together, one white and one black, and they came to our class to play on a boombox one of their songs about race relations. It was a back and forth where the black guy was role-playing as a hypothetical character that was basically the embodiment of non-productive black rage, and the white character was some sort of white supremacist. I remember the last line of the white guy's verse being him saying, "Crack the whip and take control of my nation," after the song was over. In the recording, I shit you not, there was a monologue from the teacher himself where he went on a tirade about all of the problems in America with race relations and how they need to stop. I remember almost being with him and thinking it was reasonable until he got to the end and he said something like, "And now all of the rich, greedy billionaires need to step aside and let the real founders of civilization take our rightful place as leaders." Or something like that. It was a tad bit awkward. But still, from what I gathered, knowing some people that actually liked him, for every 30 students that thought he was a total nut job, there were maybe 1 or 2 that actually totally ate it all up. Fast forward to 4-year university, where I went to the undergraduate liberal arts division of the New School University, right in the middle of Manhattan, New York. This school was known for being particularly progressive and PC, and in a lot of ways, it was. For that reason, I was friends with very few people in the specific liberal arts division in which I studied, and had a lot more friends that went to Parsons School of Design, which was technically the same university. That is the division in which Tim Gunn was the president of the fashion department, who is the guy from Project Runway. Most of my friends were design kids, some of whom got kind of famous, but I won't name drop. Still, my division was a good fit for me, as it allowed me to study everything I wanted to, from playwriting, which was my major, to theater theory and philosophy, media studies, journalism, fiction writing, poetry, choir, art appreciation, and even non-fiction theater and documentary, which I really loved. However, while I very much value my college education, my classmates were generally some combination of rich, pseudo-intellectual hipsters that thought they were better than everybody based purely on who was best at being pretentious, and then a number of Marxist, activist-type morons. Still, I was generally able to stay away from the SJW type kids because they all studied sociology, anthropology, and feminist type topics. And due to my division being only a few thousand students in total, it was easy to avoid taking those types of classes if you knew what to look for. However, freshman year, I didn't know how to avoid those classes so well, and I took a supposed writing class called Experiences with Desire, which was taught by a humorless lesbian that looked at you when you spoke in class as if she thought she could read your mind. Such classes were extremely awkward due to the fact that the main feature of my college was that it never had more than 15 students in each class because it specialized in writing style seminar structure. Thus, if you had a teacher that you didn't get along well with and students in the class that you didn't get along well with, there was no hiding from them. One of the more memorable things that happened in that class was that we watched the documentary film Paris is Burning, which is about ball culture in New York City in the late 80s. It's where Vogue dancing came from, and it's a really entertaining documentary movie. However, there were two feminists in the class, one of which was a butch lesbian, and when it was over, they each had to comment about how they thought that the filmmaker, who is a queer woman that was friends with many people in the film, she supposedly had somehow exploited all of the people in the film, as if she got rich off of it, which she didn't. To be truthful, I got pretty mad at them, and I made that pretty clear, because they were upper middle class or even upper class white girls that obviously don't know poor or homeless Black and Latino gay men, or poor Black and Latino people at all, more than likely, and they were taking it upon themselves to get offended for them. Growing up, I actually knew a lot of queer teenagers from various ethnic backgrounds, some of which spent some time being homeless, and if they got to dance in a documentary, it would have made them more happy than anything, for the most part. I was also friends with one of the only girls in our school that was from a poor neighborhood in Brooklyn, who was mixed-race, and she is not PC, and does not get along well with feminists. We're still friends, actually, and she says she wants to stream on my channel. Another thing that happened in that class was that I first heard about the notion that the personal is political, which is basically feminist code word for the notion that people that they want people to listen to should get to use their anecdotal stories as irrefutable evidence in political discussions. I remember kind of liking the concept simply in the way that I do believe people's personal stories are completely valuable when it comes to greater political discourse. But she was always rather cold to me, as if I didn't get it. Probably because I wasn't PC, I wasn't a feminist, and I was male. It was almost as if she couldn't say so, but she wanted to say, "Your experiences aren't political because you're fucking a white male." Finally, there was the one activist meeting that I attended with the weird activist Marxist kids that I tried my damnedest to avoid, which wasn't that hard because there was really no more than 20 or 30 of them, but more like 8 to 10 of the core members. They basically had a student alliance designed to cause problems and annoy the administration of my school, from what I gathered. They would find some issue where they felt the school was doing something unjust, and they'd plan ways to protest. Though, truthfully, I have no recollection of what those protests were like. Anyhow, at the meeting that I went to, they basically twisted the arms of absolutely every student they could to get them to come, but they wouldn't tell us what the meeting was actually about. Simply that it was important, they said. When I got there, it was about how they felt that the university was making plans to sabotage and dissolve their activist group. Surprise, surprise. And they wanted the help of all of the students to make sure that the student alliance remained intact so that they got to continue speaking for all of us, of course, without consulting any of us first. They managed to rope in about 15 other disinterested students that weren't myself and basically ranted about how evil our administration was at our university, and they read out loud a letter that they were going to read to a group of graduate students, which was horribly written and sounded like a meth addict conspiracy theorist in a shack wrote it. I raised my hand and told them basically that it sounded really rushed, hyperbolic, and overly angry, and that I figured they might want to revise it if they wanted the graduate students to take them seriously. Subtly implying that if I wasn't taking them seriously as a junior or senior aged undergrad, they should probably tread lightly with grad students. Well, of course, they ended up yelling at me and saying basically that I was tone policing them and that they had every right to be angry. And I swear to God, they purposefully didn't edit the memo just to spite me. And of course, the graduate students thought they were full of shit. That all said, the whole SJW Marxist feminist stuff was definitely around 15 or 20 years ago when I was in school. But it was a lot smaller of a presence at that point, and probably mostly at schools like the ones I went to. Probably at places like Berkeley and Evergreen. However, I think it all happened like this. Like the black supremacist teacher I had at community college, there were a few favorite teachers at my 4-year university that the activist students absolutely adored, who were all black, of course, and taught them things like, only white people can be racist, which, for the record, bugged the crap out of my friend that actually grew up in a rough part of Brooklyn. She's mixed race, and she's all like, bullshit. Thus, what I think happened is that those students followed their favorite teachers around, like the Pied Piper, and those wacky Marxist ideologue teachers loved it because they all have egos, and they more than likely connected all of their teachers' pets with activist groups, volunteering positions, and maybe even the occasional job. Eventually, those kids grew older, had connections to offer to others, and maybe started teaching. So even though there were probably no more than 15 students in my graduating class that were really crazy SJW wackos that nobody really even liked, they still multiplied and spread their madness to others. And that's how we got to where we are. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.